"I can save him," she whispered. Deep in St. Augustine's VIP ward, New York's beacon of medical prestige, Gideon Strathmore, a 35-year-old tech billionaire, lay motionless on a silk-draped hospital bed, his body crumbling under a disease no one could name. 30 doctors armed with Harvard, Yale, and Johns Hopkins degrees stood defeated, their charts piling high as monitors wailed. Death loomed closer. Zaria Caldwell, 28, a striking black woman with long hair pinned in a tight bun, glided through the shadowed corridors in her green cleaner scrubs, unseen. While wiping Gideon's bedside, a sharp chemical scent from his nutritional drink jolted her pharmacology-trained mind. She froze. She knew what 30 doctors missed. Could a cleaner outsmart an elite? Would her truth survive their scorn? The answer lay hidden, waiting. The sterile hum of St. Augustine's VIP ward pulsed through the air, a relentless reminder of life hanging by a thread. Zaria Caldwell's green scrubs whispered against the polished floors as she maneuvered her cleaning cart past gleaming walls, her long hair pinned tightly in a bun, a silent rebellion against her invisibility. The chemical scent from Gideon Strathmore's nutritional drink still lingered in her mind, sharp and wrong, like a warning etched in her pharmacology-trained memory. She'd seen the billionaire's pallor, the faint tremors in his fingers, the metallic tang in his breath, clues screaming cadmium poisoning. But in this fortress of prestige, where 30 doctors with Ivy League pedigrees floundered, who would heed a cleaner's whisper? Gideon lay in his silk-draped bed, a ghost of the tech titan who once commanded boardrooms. His sunken eyes stared blankly at the ceiling, his body betraying him as monitors tracked his fading pulse. The room, a blend of luxury and medicine, felt like a gilded cage, its mahogany panels mocking the chaos of his condition. Charts cluttered the bedside, scribbled with theories, autoimmune disorders, rare syndromes that led nowhere. Zaria, wiping down a marble counter, stole glances at the data, her mind racing. The symptoms aligned too perfectly with cadmium, a poison so subtle it could masquerade as a dozen diseases. Yet the weight of her role pressed down, a black cleaner, unseen, unheard, daring to see what the elite missed. Dr. Everett Langley strode into the room, his silver hair catching the soft light, his voice a low command that silenced the residents trailing him. "We've ruled out infectious causes," he said, flipping through a chart. "His kidneys are failing faster now. Tremors worsening. We need to pivot. Consider genetic anomalies." His team nodded, their faces etched with frustration. Zaria kept her head down, her cloth moving in rhythmic arcs, but her ears drank in every word. Langley's confidence, unshaken despite their failures, grated against her. She'd learned to listen like this at Columbia, absorbing lectures while scribbling notes, before her brother's leukemia stole her future. 10 years ago, Zara had been a star, her scholarship a ladder out of poverty. She dreamed of decoding diseases, saving lives. But her brother's illness demanded she drop out, leaving her to scrape by as a single mother to her daughter, Amara. Now in the dead of night, she fed her passion with library books and online courses, her mind a vault of knowledge no uniform could erase. As she polished Gideon's bedside table, her eyes caught the nutritional drink again, its sleek bottle a gift from Thalia Warwick, Gideon's childhood friend. Thalia's visits were a ritual, her warm smile urging nurses to give Gideon the drink for strength. Zaria's gut twisted. Something about that bottle, its faint sheen, felt deliberate. "Cleaners shouldn't linger," Langley snapped, his gaze slicing past her. The dismissal stung, a blade honed by years of being overlooked. Zaria nodded, her face a mask, but her mind churned. She'd seen Thalia yesterday, her tailored coat brushing the floor as she placed the drink with care. "It's his favorite," Thalia had said, her voice too smooth. Zaria's pharmacology training kicked in. Cadmium, tasteless, odorless in small doses, could slip through standard tests, accumulating in tissues until organs failed. The drink was the perfect vessel. But who would believe her? A cleaner, daring to diagnose where 30 doctors faltered. She pushed her cart down the corridor, the hospital's silence amplifying her thoughts. The VIP ward's opulence, crystal chandeliers, muted carpets, clashed with the urgency of Gideon's decline. Zarya paused, her reflection flickering in a glass panel. Her beauty, softened by exhaustion, hit a mind sharper than the scalpels in this place. She'd noticed Gideon's chart, neuropathy creeping upward, hair thinning in patches, a metallic breath nurses dismissed as trivial. Each clue pointed to cadmium, a poison from her old textbooks, rare but deadly. Thalia's insistence on the drink, her perfect poise, felt like a performance. Zarya's pulse quickened. She was no doctor, but she saw the pattern clear as day. In the break room, Zarya sipped stale coffee, her mind replaying Thalia's visits. The woman's warmth seemed calculated, her eyes darting when she thought no one watched. Zarya had overheard residents puzzling over Gideon's case. "It's like 3 diseases at once," one said. "Langley's betting on a genetic defect," another replied. They were chasing shadows, misled by Thalia's suggestion of lupus, a red herring that kept them blind. Zarya's fingers tightened around her cup. She needed proof, something concrete to shatter the hierarchy that kept her voice mute. But the risk loomed large. Her job was Amara's lifeline, the only thing keeping them afloat. As her shift ended, Zarya lingered near Gideon's room, her card a shield. She glimpsed Thalia through the glass door, adjusting the drink bottle with a precision that felt wrong. The woman's smile never reached her eyes. Zarya's heart pounded. She knew what was killing Gideon, but speaking up meant stepping into a firestorm. Would she risk everything for a man she didn't know? Could she trust her instincts against a system that saw her as nothing? The hospital's sterile air pressed against her, urging a choice. Zarya straightened, her bun tight as her resolve. She'd find the truth, no matter the cost. But how deep did Thalia's deception run, and what drove her to poison a friend? Zarya Caldwell's footsteps echoed faintly in the dim corridors of St. Augustine's VIP ward, each step a reminder of her unseen existence. The sting of Dr. Langley's dismissal, "Cleaners shouldn't linger," burned in her chest, a wound reopened with every glance that slid past her. Her long hair, pinned tightly in a bun, felt like a tether to her resolve, holding back the flood of doubt that threatened to drown her. The chemical scent of Gideon Strathmore's nutritional drink still clung to her senses, a silent accusation that she alone heard. Cadmium poisoning, her mind whispered, its symptoms, pallor, tremors, metallic breath, etched in her memory from Columbia's lecture halls. But the weight of her green scrubs, the badge marking her as just a cleaner, anchored her voice in her throat. Could she, a black woman invisible to these walls, dare to challenge 30 doctors? The hospital's sterile air pressed against her skin as she pushed her cart past Gideon's room, its glass door revealing his frail form. His chest rose weakly, each breath a battle against an enemy no one else saw. Zarya's heart clenched, not just for him, but for the ghost of her brother Malik, whose leukemia had stolen her dreams a decade ago. She'd sat by Malik's bedside, helpless, watching his light fade. Now Gideon's sinking frame stirred that same ache, a raw wound of failure she couldn't repeat. Her fingers tightened on the mop handle, the rhythm of her cleaning a shield against the chaos in her mind. She was no doctor, no hero, but the pattern was clear. Thalia Warwick's daily visits, her too perfect smile, the drink she insisted Gideon needed. Every detail screamed deception. Zarya paused, her reflection caught in a polished steel panel. Her beauty, softened by exhaustion, masked a mind that refused to dim. At Columbia, she'd been a star, her scholarship a beacon of hope for a girl from Brooklyn's rough edges. Professors had praised her knack for spotting patterns in complex data, but Malik's diagnosis had shattered that path. She'd traded textbooks for a mop, lectures for late-night online courses, all to keep her daughter Amara fed. Yet the fire of her passion burned still, fueled by dog-eared pharmacology books read under flickering apartment lights. Gideon's chart, glimpsed during her rounds, haunted her. Neuropathy creeping upward, hair falling in patches, kidneys failing. Cadmium, she thought, her pulse quickening. It was textbook if anyone bothered to look. In the break room, Zarya sank into a plastic chair, the hum of a vending machine her only company. She clutched a chipped mug, the coffee bitter as her thoughts. Thalia's face flashed in her mind. Those calculated smiles, the way she'd adjust the drink bottle with care, as if staging a scene. It's his favorite, Thalia had told a nurse, her voice honeyed but cold. Zaria's gut twisted. She'd seen Thalia linger after visits, her eyes scanning the room like a predator's. The woman's warmth was a mask, and Zaria's training told her why. Cadmium, tasteless, could be slipped into a drink, accumulating until it killed. But who was she to accuse a billionaire's friend, a cleaner, whose voice carried no weight in these halls? Her thoughts drifted to Amara, sleeping now in their cramped apartment, her small hands clutching a stuffed bear. Zaria's job, meager as it was, paid for that bear, for school supplies, for a life she fought to keep stable. If she spoke up, if she dared challenge the doctors, she could lose it all. The hospital's hierarchy was unforgiving. Langley's cold stare, the nurse's polite indifference, the manager's warnings. Yet Malik's memory tugged at her, his frail voice begging her to stay strong. "You're smarter than them, Z," he'd said, his last words before the cancer won. She hadn't saved him, but she could save Gideon, if she could make them listen. Zaria rose, her resolve hardening like steel. She slipped back to Gideon's room, her card a quiet accomplice. Through the glass, she saw Dr. Langley addressing his team, his voice a low rumble of authority. "We're missing something," he admitted, frustration cracking his usual poise. His symptoms defy logic. Zaria's ears caught every word, her old student habits kicking in. She noticed Thalia's latest gift, a new bottle of the drink, placed prominently. Its label gleamed under the soft light, mocking her. She wanted to grab it, to scream the truth, but the invisible chains of her role held her back. Langley's gaze flicked toward her, sharp and dismissive. "Cleaners, out!" he barked. Zaria nodded, her face neutral, but her heart raced with defiance. As she wheeled her cart away, Zaria's mind churned. She'd seen the visitor log. Thalia's name, every day, aligned with Gideon's worsening state. The doctors were chasing ghosts, misled by Thalia's lupus theory, while the real poison sat in plain sight. Zaria's breath caught, a mix of fear and clarity. She wasn't just fighting for Gideon. She was fighting for the girl she'd been, the one who believed knowledge could change the world. But how could she prove it? How could a cleaner break through a wall of degrees and egos? The hospital's silence pressed in, heavy with secrets. Zaria's hand brushed her badge, her name a whisper of worth no one here saw. She'd need more than instinct. She'd need evidence and the courage to risk everything. The sterile glow of St. Augustine's VIP ward cast long shadows as Zaria Caldwell pushed her cleaning cart, her heart a drumbeat of resolve and fear. The sting of Dr. Langley's dismissal still lingered, a bruise on her spirit, but the memory of her brother Malik's frail voice, "You're smarter than them, Z," burned brighter. Her green scrubs swished softly, her long hair pinned tightly in a bun, a quiet defiance against the hospital's hierarchy that rendered her invisible. The chemical scent of Gideon Strathmore's nutritional drink haunted her, a clue no one else noticed. Cadmium, her mind insisted, its symptoms, pale skin, trembling fingers, metallic breath, woven into a pattern only she could see. But in this world of Ivy League egos, her truth felt like a whisper against a storm. Could she, a cleaner, unravel a billionaire's death sentence? Zaria paused outside Gideon's room, the glass door framing his weakened form. His chest rose faintly, each breath a fragile thread, his face a mask of exhaustion. The sight clawed at her, stirring memories of Malik's final days, his body betrayed by cancer she couldn't fight. She gripped her mop, the wood grounding her against the surge of grief. Gideon wasn't Malik, but the helplessness was the same, a life slipping away while experts fumbled. She glimpsed his chart, neuropathy climbing, hair thinning in odd patches, kidneys faltering. Every sign pointed to cadmium poisoning, a silent killer she'd studied at Columbia. Yet the risk of speaking up loomed large, threatening her job, her daughter Amara's stability. Her heart ached, torn between fear and a fierce need to act. Inside the room, Thalia Warwick stood by Gideon's bedside, her tailored coat pristine, her smile a polished veneer. "This drink's his lifeline," she told a nurse, her voice warm but sharp, like a blade wrapped in silk. She adjusted the bottle with deliberate care, its sleek label catching the light. Zaria's pulse quickened, her eyes narrowing. Thalia's insistence felt too rehearsed, her gestures too precise. The woman's daily visits, always with that same drink, aligned too perfectly with Gideon's decline. Zaria's pharmacology training kicked in. Cadmium, tasteless, could be slipped into liquid, accumulating in tissues until organs collapsed. Thalia's suggestion of lupus, casually dropped to the doctors, had sent them chasing shadows. Was it ignorance or intent? Zaria resumed cleaning, her cloth gliding over a marble counter, but her mind was a storm of calculations. She'd overheard residents in the corridor, their voices thick with frustration. "It's like three diseases hitting at once," one muttered. "Langley's pushing a genetic defect," another replied, "but the tests don't add up." Thalia's lupus theory had burrowed into their minds, a clever distraction. Zaria's chest tightened with certainty. The drink was the key, and Thalia was no innocent friend. But proof was a luxury she didn't have. Not yet. She needed evidence, something to make the doctors listen, to break through the wall of degrees that silenced her. Her thoughts raced as she wiped down a glass panel, her reflection a fleeting glimpse of the woman she'd been. Columbia's prodigy, destined to save lives. That Zaria had believed knowledge could conquer anything, but life had taught her otherwise. Malik's death had shattered her faith, leaving her to scrape by as a cleaner, her dreams tucked into late-night study sessions. Yet Gideon's fading pulse reignited that fire. She couldn't save her brother, but she could save this man, if she dared. Her fingers trembled, not from fear but from the weight of possibility. Amara's face flashed in her mind, her daughter's laughter the anchor of her world. Losing her job could break them, but letting Gideon die would break her soul. Zaria slipped into an empty lounge, the hum of a fluorescent light her only companion. She sank into a chair, her hands cradling her face. Thalia's smile haunted her, a mask hiding something darker. Zaria recalled a lecture on heavy metals. Cadmium, insidious, could mimic multiple conditions, evading standard tests. Gideon's symptoms, tremors, pallor, kidney failure, matched perfectly. She'd seen Thalia linger after visits, her eyes scanning the room like a hawk's. The woman's warmth was a performance, and Zaria's gut screamed that the drink was her weapon. But how to prove it? A cleaner's word was dust in this hospital, her voice drowned by the clatter of credentials. She rose, her resolve a quiet flame. Back in Gideon's room, she paused by the door, watching Thalia leave, her coat swishing like a predator's tail. The nutritional drink sat prominently, its label a taunt. Zaria's breath caught. She needed to test it, to confirm the poison. But every step forward risked her livelihood. Her heart pounded, a mix of dread and defiance. Malik's voice echoed, "You're smarter than them." She wasn't invisible, not to herself. She'd find a way to expose the truth, to make them see what she saw. But what drove Thalia to such betrayal? And could Zaria risk everything for a stranger's life? Zaria Caldwell's heart pounded like a trapped bird as she wheeled her cleaning cart through St. Augustine's shadowed corridors, the sterile air thick with the weight of her unspoken truth. Thalia Warwick's calculated smile and the gleam of that nutritional drink lingered in her mind, a poison disguised as care. Her long hair, pinned tightly in a bun, felt heavy, as if anchoring the storm of emotions raging within. She knew Gideon Strathmore was dying of cadmium poisoning. His pale skin, trembling fingers, and metallic breath were undeniable. But the hospital's hierarchy loomed like a fortress, her voice a mere whisper against its walls. The memory of her brother Malik's fading light fueled her resolve, yet the fear of losing everything for her daughter, Amara, clawed at her courage. Could she risk her world to save a stranger's? In the quiet of the VIP ward, Zaria paused near Gideon's room, the glass door framing his fragile form. His chest barely moved, each breath a quiet plea for answers no one else could give. The sight pierced her, a knife twisting in the wound of Malik's loss. She'd sat by her brother's bedside, powerless, his leukemia stealing him, while she could only watch. Now Gideon's fading pulse echoed that pain, a call she couldn't ignore. Her green scrubs felt like chains, marking her as invisible, but her mind burned with clarity. Thalia's drink was killing him, and her lupus suggestion was a lie to blind the doctors. Zaria's fingers gripped her cloth, the rhythm of cleaning a lifeline to steady her trembling heart. She slipped into a staff lounge, the fluorescent hum a stark contrast to the ward's opulence. Sinking into a chair, she clutched a chipped mug, the coffee cold and bitter, mirroring her dread. She decided to speak, to share her suspicion with Lena, the night nurse whose kindness softened the hospital's cold edges. But as she approached Lena near the nurse's station, her throat tightened. "Lena," Zaria whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of monitors. Gideon's symptoms, pallor, tremors, metallic breath, they match cadmium poisoning. The drink Thalia brings. It's not right. Lena's warm eyes flickered with sympathy, then hardened. "Zaria, you're sweet, but you're not a doctor. Leave this to the experts." The words stung, a slap of dismissal that echoed Langley's scorn. Zaria's cheeks burned, but she held her ground, her bun a silent crown of defiance. She tried again, her voice steadier. "I studied pharmacology at Columbia. I know what I'm seeing." Lena's face softened, but doubt lingered. "Zaria, you're risking your job. Let it go." The rejection sank into her bones, a familiar ache of being unseen. She retreated to her cart, the weight of her role pressing harder. She wasn't just fighting for Gideon, she was fighting for the girl she'd been, the one who believed her mind could move mountains. But the hospital saw only her scrubs, not the knowledge beneath. As she polished a corridor railing, Dr. Everett Langley swept past, his silver hair catching the light, his voice a low command to a resident. "We're chasing a genetic defect now," he said, frustration seeping through his poise. "The lupus theory's a dead end." Zaria's pulse quickened. Thalia's deception was unraveling, but not fast enough. She wanted to shout, to tell them the truth. But Langley's earlier words, "Cleaners shouldn't linger," rang in her ears. Her heart sank, heavy with the fear of what speaking up could cost. Amara's laughter, her small hands clutching a stuffed bear, flashed in Zaria's mind. This job, meager as it was, kept their world afloat. Losing it would shatter everything. Back in her apartment, Zaria sat at a worn kitchen table, her pharmacology textbook open, its pages a lifeline to her past. Malik's face haunted her, his frail voice urging her to be strong. "You're smarter than them, Z," he'd whispered before the cancer took him. She hadn't saved him, but Gideon was still breathing. Her fingers traced the book's diagrams of heavy metals, cadmium's effects stark and clear. Neuropathy, kidney failure, hair loss. Every symptom matched Gideon's chart, glimpsed during her rounds. Thalia's calculated warmth, her insistence on that drink, was no coincidence. Zaria's chest tightened with certainty, but also dread. Speaking up meant facing Langley's wrath, the manager's threats, the hospital's unyielding hierarchy. She stood, her reflection in a cracked mirror, showing a woman worn but unbroken. Her bun held firm, a symbol of her resolve. She'd been invisible too long, her knowledge buried under scrubs and scorn. Gideon's life hung by a thread, and she was the only one who saw the poison. But the cost of courage loomed large. Her job, Amara's future, her fragile stability. Her heart pounded, a mix of fear and fire. Malik's memory pushed her forward, a silent vow not to fail again. She'd speak, but first she needed proof, something even Langley couldn't dismiss. What drove Thalia to such betrayal? Could Zaria's voice break through the silence of her role? Saria Caldwell's hands trembled as she gripped her cleaning cart, the sterile hum of St. Augustine's VIP ward a deafening pulse in her ears. Lena's gentle rejection, "You're not a doctor," and the manager's looming threat of dismissal coiled around her heart like barbed wire. Her long hair, pinned in a tight bun, felt like a lifeline to the woman she'd been at Columbia, a pharmacology prodigy who saw patterns where others saw chaos. The certainty of Gideon Strathmore's cadmium poisoning burned in her chest, its symptoms, pale skin, tremors, metallic breath, undeniable. Yet the hospital's hierarchy stood like a stone wall, her voice a flicker against its weight. Thalia Warwick's calculated warmth haunted her, the nutritional drink a poison disguised as care. Zaria's resolve flared, but fear for her daughter Amara gnawed at her courage. Could she risk her family's fragile world to prove the truth? The corridor's dim light cast shadows as Zaria approached Gideon's room, her green scrubs blending into the hospital's silence. Through the glass door, she saw his frail form, his chest barely rising, each breath a quiet battle. The sight stabbed her, reviving the ghost of her brother Malik, whose leukemia had left her powerless. She'd failed him, but Gideon's fading pulse was a chance to rewrite that ending. Her heart pounded, a mix of dread and defiance. Thalia's drink, sitting prominently on the bedside table, mocked her with its sleek label. Zaria knew it was the key, but she needed proof, something to shatter the doctor's blindness. Her job, Amara's future, hung in the balance. Yet the fire of her training roared louder than her fear. Zaria timed her move for the shift change, when nurses were distracted, their voices a low hum at the station. She slipped into Gideon's room, her card a silent shield. The nutritional drink gleamed under the soft light, its chemical tang sharp in her nose. Her fingers hovered over a sterile vial from the supply closet, her breath shallow. This was it, the moment she crossed a line. As she pipetted a drop of the liquid, footsteps echoed outside. Her heart leapt to her throat. The manager's gruff voice cut through. "Caldwell, you're still here." Zaria's hands shook, the vial nearly slipping. She knocked over a water bucket, the splash masking her panic. "Spilled again," she muttered, her voice steady despite the storm inside. The manager grunted and moved on, leaving her trembling, the vial clutched tight. In a cramped maintenance closet, Zaria's world narrowed to a makeshift lab. The dim bulb flickered, casting shadows on the shelves of cleaning supplies, her only tools. Her hands, steady now, mixed the sample with chemicals from a janitor's kit, crude but effective for detecting cadmium. Her Columbia training guided her, memories of lab sessions flooding back. A faint yellow precipitate formed, a silent scream of confirmation. Cadmium. Her breath caught, a surge of triumph laced with terror. She snapped a photo with her phone, the evidence glowing like a beacon. But the weight of what came next pressed down, presenting this to a hospital that saw her as nothing. Her chest tightened, Amara's laughter echoing in her mind, a reminder of what she could lose. Zaria leaned against the closet wall, the cold concrete grounding her. Malik's voice rang in her ears. "You're smarter than them, Z." She'd watched him fade, her hands empty of answers. Now Gideon's life rested in hers, and she couldn't turn away. She opened the visitor log, her eyes scanning Thalia's name, each entry a tick mark in Gideon's decline. The pattern was undeniable. Thalia's visits, Gideon's worsening tremors, his kidneys failing. Zaria's fingers traced the log, her resolve hardening like steel. Thalia's smile, her insistence on the drink, was a calculated betrayal, but proving it meant stepping into a firestorm, risking the job that kept Amara's world intact. Her reflection in a dusty mirror showed a woman worn but unbroken, her bun a crown of defiance. The hospital's silence was suffocating, its hierarchy a cage. But Zaria's mind was free. She tucked the vial into her pocket, the photo on her phone a fragile hope. The doctors were chasing ghosts, misled by Thalia's lupus lie, while the truth sat in plain sight. Zaria's heart raced, not just with fear, but with a fire she hadn't felt since Columbia. She wasn't invisible, not to herself. Malik's memory pushed her forward, a vow not to fail again. She'd need more than this vial to make them listen, but it was a start. What drove Thalia to poison a friend? And could Zaria's courage survive the hospital's scorn? Zaria Caldwell's heart thundered as she clutched the sterile vial in her pocket, its weight a fragile anchor against the storm within. The yellow precipitate from her makeshift test, a silent scream of cadmium, burned in her mind, proof that Gideon Strathmore was being poisoned. Her green scrubs clung to her, her long hair pinned tightly in a bun, a shield against the hospital's suffocating hierarchy. The memory of her brother Malik's fading voice, "You're smarter than them, Z," pushed her forward. But Lena's rejection and the manager's threat gnawed at her courage. She'd risked everything to confirm Thalia Warwick's betrayal, but now, standing outside Gideon's room, The glass door loomed like a guillotine. Could she, a cleaner, force 30 doctors to see what she saw? Or would her voice be crushed by their scorn? The VIP ward's sterile hum intensified as alarms erupted, a piercing wail signaling Gideon's collapse. Through the glass, Zaria saw his body convulse, his frail form racked by violent tremors, monitors screaming in protest. Her chest tightened, the sight a brutal echo of Malik's final days. She couldn't save her brother, but Gideon's life hung by a thread she could still grasp. Nurses rushed past, their voices sharp with panic, as 30 doctors gathered in a conference room nearby, their faces grim. Zaria's fingers brushed the vial, the photo on her phone, the visitor log, her weapons against a system that saw her as nothing. Her daughter Amara's laughter flashed in her mind, a reminder of what she could lose. But her resolve flared, a fire no fear could douse. She took a breath, her bun a crown of defiance, and pushed open the conference room door. 30 pairs of eyes snapped to her, shock rippling through the room. Dr. Everett Langley stood at the head, his silver hair glinting, his voice a low growl. "This is a closed meeting. Get out or I'll call security." The threat sliced through her, but Zaria's heart pounded with a courage forged in grief and grit. "Mr. Strathmore is dying of cadmium poisoning," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She placed her evidence on the table, the vial, the phone photo, the log. "Thalia Warwick's drink is the source." The room froze, a silence heavy with disbelief. Langley's face reddened, his hand hovering over his phone. "You're a cleaner, not a doctor," he roared, his words a lash meant to banish her. Zaria's cheeks burned, the sting of dismissal a familiar wound. But she stood tall, her eyes locked on his. "I was a pharmacology student at Columbia," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "Cadmium accumulates slowly, mimicking other conditions. It causes neuropathy, kidney failure, and hair loss, Gideon symptoms. Your tests miss it because the doses are small." Her heart raced, not with fear, but with the clarity of truth. She pointed to the log. "Thalia's visits match his decline. It's no coincidence." Dr. Nia Torres, a young doctor with sharp eyes, leaned forward, her gaze on the vial. "The tremors, the pallor. It fits," she said, her voice a lifeline in the storm. Langley scoffed, his hand still poised to call security. "This is absurd. You're wasting our time." Zaria's throat tightened, memories of Malik's helpless form flooding back. She'd failed him, but she wouldn't fail now. "I tested the drink myself," she said, tapping the photo. "The precipitate proves cadmium. Check the log. Every visit, he gets worse." Her voice shook, not with doubt, but with the weight of her fight. For Gideon, for Malik, for herself. The room's silence was a blade, cutting through the hierarchy. Residents exchanged glances, some skeptical, others intrigued. Torres stood, her voice firm. "We should run a specific cadmium test. It's worth checking." Langley's eyes narrowed, his pride a wall, but doubt flickered in his gaze. Zaria's heart pounded, a mix of dread and hope. She'd crossed a line, her job, Amara's future, on the line. Yet the fire of her training, her years of unseen study, blazed brighter. She saw Malik's face, his trust in her mind. She'd spoken, but would they listen? Or would they crush her for daring to rise? Zaria stood firm, her bun a symbol of her unyielding spirit. The doctor's stares bore into her, some with scorn, others with curiosity. She felt the weight of her scrubs, the badge that marked her as less. But her knowledge was her armor. Langley's hand dropped from his phone, his silence a crack in his authority. Torres nodded at her, a spark of respect in her eyes. Zaria's breath caught, a flicker of triumph battling her fear. She'd laid bare the truth, but the battle wasn't won. What drove Thalia to poison a friend? Would Zaria's evidence shatter the hospital's walls, or would it cost her everything? Zaria Caldwell stood frozen in the conference room, her heart a wild drumbeat as 30 pairs of eyes bore into her. The vial, the photo of the yellow precipitate, and the visitor log lay on the table, her fragile weapons against a fortress of skepticism. Her green scrubs clung to her, her long hair pinned tightly in a bun, a silent anchor to her trembling resolve. Dr. Langley's threat, "I call security," still echoed, a blade poised to cut her down. But Dr. Torres' support had cracked the silence. Zaria's chest ached with the weight of her courage, the memory of her brother Malik's frail voice. "You're smarter than them. Z, a lifeline in the storm." She'd spoken the truth about Gideon Strathmore's cadmium poisoning, but would they believe a cleaner, or would her world, her daughter Amara's future, crumble for her audacity? The room's tension was a living thing, heavy and sharp, as Dr. Nia Torres ordered a cadmium-specific test. Langley's silver hair glinted under the fluorescent light, his face a mask of fury and doubt. But he said nothing, his hand dropping from his phone. Zaria's breath caught, a mix of dread and hope swirling in her gut. She'd crossed a line, her job hanging by a thread, yet the fire of her Columbia training burned brighter than her fear. Gideon's seizure, the wail of monitors still fresh in her mind, drove her forward. She saw Malik's face, his trust in her mind, and felt the sting of her failure to save him. This time, she wouldn't let a life slip away. Hours crawled by, each second a weight on Zaria's heart. She lingered in the corridor, her cleaning card a pretense, her eyes darting to the lab where technicians worked. Nurses whispered, their glances shifting from indifference to curiosity. Zaria's fingers brushed the vial in her pocket, its presence a quiet triumph. She'd been invisible for so long, her knowledge buried under scrubs and scorn, but now her truth stood exposed, fragile yet unyielding. Her thoughts flickered to Amara, sleeping in their cramped apartment, unaware of the gamble her mother had taken, the fear of losing everything. Amara's laughter, their fragile stability, clawed at her, but Malik's memory held her steady, a vow to fight. A nurse burst from the lab, her voice sharp with urgency. "Cadmium levels are high in his blood and the drink." The words hit Zaria like a wave, relief flooding her veins, followed by a surge of vindication. The conference room doors swung open, and Dr. Torres emerged, her eyes meeting Zaria's, with a spark of respect. "You were right," she said, her voice firm. "It's cadmium poisoning." The residents murmured, their skepticism crumbling, but Langley stood rigid, his jaw tight. Zaria's heart soared, yet fear lingered. Would they punish her for daring to speak? She stood tall, her bun a crown of defiance. As the room's energy shifted, her presence no longer a shadow. Security footage was pulled, revealing Thalia Warwick's calculated moves, her gloved hand slipping a vial into the nutritional drink during a visit, her smile never faltering. The FBI was called. Their presence was a quiet storm in the ward. Thalia, now detained, confessed, a bitter tale of revenge. Gideon had stolen her business idea years ago, leaving her bankrupt. The drink, her gift, was her weapon, each dose a step toward his death. Zaria's chest tightened, not with triumph, but with sorrow. Betrayal cut deeper than poison, and she knew its sting. Years of being unseen, dismissed, had taught her that. Dr. Langley approached, his silver hair no longer imposing, his voice stiff but raw. "You were correct," he said, the words heavy with reluctant humility. "I owe you an apology." Zaria nodded, her face composed, but inside a tide of emotions crashed. Vindication, pride, and the ache of years spent invisible. She'd fought for Gideon, for Malik, for herself, and won. Yet the cost lingered in her mind. Her job, Amara's future, still at risk. "I saw what others missed because I'm unseen," she said softly, her voice a quiet blade. Langley's eyes flickered, a crack in his armor, and he walked away, diminished but unbroken. From his bed, Gideon stirred, his weak voice breaking the silence. "Thank you, Miss Caldwell," he whispered, his eyes finding hers, a flicker of life in their depths. Zaria's heart clenched, not with joy but with a quiet satisfaction, the weight of a life saved settling on her shoulders. Nurses nodded, their glances now warm, and residents watched her with newfound respect. The hospital's hierarchy, once a monolith, cracked under the weight of her truth. She stood by the corridor, her bun firm, her scrubs no longer a cage. She'd shattered her invisibility, but at what price? Had she saved Gideon only to lose her own stability? And what drove Thalia to such a calculated betrayal? Zaria Caldwell stood in the quiet corridor of St. Augustine's VIP ward, her heart still racing from the seismic shift of her truth unveiled. The vial, the photo, the visitor log, her fragile weapons, had shattered the hospital's hierarchy, proving Gideon Strathmore's cadmium poisoning by Thalia Warwick's hand. Her green scrubs clung to her long hair pinned tightly in a bun, no longer a symbol of invisibility, but a crown of triumph. Dr. Langley's apology, stiff yet sincere, and Gideon's whispered thank you echoed in her chest, a tide of vindication that threatened to overwhelm her. Yet fear lingered, a sharp edge beneath her pride. Had she saved a life only to lose her own stability? Amara's laughter, her daughter's anchor in a fragile world, haunted her. Could Zaria, once unseen, now step into the light she'd earned? The ward's sterile hum softened as nurses passed, their nods no longer dismissive but warm, their eyes meeting hers with respect. Zaria's fingers brushed her badge, the word cleaner, a fading label. She'd fought for Gideon, for her brother Malik's memory, for the woman Columbia had promised she'd be. But the cost weighed heavily. Her job, Amara's future, hung by a thread. She slipped into a break room, the fluorescent light casting her shadow long and unbroken. Her heart swelled with a quiet pride, tempered by the ache of years spent unseen. Malik's voice, "You're smarter than them, Z," rang clear, a beacon through the storm of doubt. She'd saved a life, but what came next for a woman the world had trained to ignore? A week later, Gideon's summons arrived, pulling Zaria from the hospital's familiar corridors to his Manhattan office, a tower of glass and steel. Her scrubs traded for a simple dress, her bun still tight, she stepped into a world that once seemed unreachable. Gideon, thinner but alive, rose from his desk, his eyes bright with gratitude. "Ms. Caldwell," he said, his voice steady, "you saved my life." Zaria's throat tightened, the weight of his words a mirror to her own worth. He slid a folder across the desk. A full scholarship to finish her pharmacology degree at Columbia, a stipend for Amara's care. "This isn't charity," he said, his gaze unwavering. "It's an investment in brilliance." Her heart leapt, a surge of hope crashing against years of buried dreams. Zaria's fingers trembled as they traced the folder's edges, the paper a bridge to a future she'd thought lost. Malik's frail smile flashed in her mind, his trust in her a fire rekindled. She saw Amara's face, her daughter's dreams now within reach. Tears pricked her eyes, not of sorrow, but of a joy so fierce it hurt. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Gideon nodded, his own eyes soft. "You saw what 30 doctors missed," he said. "That's not just skill, it's strength." Zaria's chest swelled, the weight of her scrubs lifting, replaced by the promise of a white coat. She wasn't invisible anymore, but the path ahead felt daunting, a leap into a world that had once rejected her. Back at Columbia, Zaria walked through halls she'd left a decade ago, her bun a quiet nod to her journey. The lecture rooms buzzed with possibility, but her heart carried the scars of her past. Malik's loss, years of dismissal, the fear of failing Amara. Dr. Nia Torres, now a mentor, greeted her with a smile. "Your perspective is unique," Torres said, her voice warm. "The hospital wants you in their toxicology lab." Zaria's breath caught, pride mingling with disbelief. She'd been unseen, her knowledge buried, but now her mind was a beacon. Yet doubt lingered. Could she reclaim her place in a world that had pushed her aside? At a medical conference, Zaria stood at a podium, her bun firm, her voice steady. "Knowledge doesn't need a title," she said, her words ringing through the room. "It grows in those who dare to see differently." The audience, including Dr. Langley, listened, his nod a quiet acknowledgement of her victory. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with purpose. She saw Amara in the crowd, her daughter's eyes wide with pride, and felt Malik's presence, his faith in her fulfilled. The hospital's hierarchy had cracked, not just for her, but for others like her, unseen but brilliant. Zaria returned to St. Augustine part-time, her scrubs now a choice, not a cage. Nurses smiled, Doctors sought her insights and the lab welcomed her mind. Her bun, once a shield, was now a symbol of resilience. She'd fought for truth, for Gideon, for herself, and won. But the victory was bittersweet. Years of invisibility had shaped her, given her eyes that saw what others missed. As she walked the corridors, her heart carried a quiet vow to never let her light dim, no matter the cost. Had she truly escaped the shadows? Could her brilliance reshape a world that once overlooked her? Zaria Caldwell's journey, from an unseen cleaner to a beacon of brilliance, proves that truth can shine through the darkest shadows. Her courage, forged in grief and grit, saved a life and shattered the walls of prejudice. What did her story stir in you? Did her defiance spark hope, or did Thalia's betrayal chill your heart? Share your thoughts. Let us know how Zaria's fight resonated, how her unseen wisdom moved you. Your voice matters, just as hers did. Thank you for walking this path with us, for believing in the power of the overlooked. Beat Stories is grateful for your time, your heart, and your spark. Come back for more tales of underdogs rising, where genius breaks free from chains. Until then, keep seeing what others miss. We'll meet again in the next story.